Hi, everybody. This is Mike, and welcome back to the Triple R Show, Real World Recovery, where honesty meets healing every single day. We're so glad that you're here to join us, and we are also thrilled that we have Dr. Harry Henshaw coming back as a guest with us. Dr. Harry Henshaw is a licensed mental health counselor and received his doctorate in human development and counseling. Dr. Harry, so glad to see you, and welcome back.
Good to be here. I enjoy this. Yep.
Always a pleasure. I was thinking of you the other day, actually. In yesterday's one of the daily reflections from another support group, and we know transformational therapy is different and unknown to a lot of people that are not familiar with it. But the quote was, "Step into the sunlight because nothing much grows in darkness."
Mm-hmm.
And immediately that quote jumped off the page of me, and I was like, conversely, nothing's going to grow until we get into the darkness. And we start finding out what was causing us to go into the alcohol or the drugs or whatever we're finding to numb ourselves and to numb our feeling.
No, I said one of the things that I mentioned in one of our in the support group is that Carl Jung had a quote, and I'll paraphrase the quote. He said that, as long as something stays unconscious, we need to make that which is unconscious conscious, or our life continues to be as fate. And he really believed in the unconscious, and that's where the issues are. That really they have to be dealt with. But they have to be also brought into the conscious state, or we can't change them.
Which is hard to do, correct? Because for how long have we been feeding that unconscious?
Well, we've been feeding and not knowing. But when you have, it's like the first one starts when I ask people about self-esteem and using substances. And a lot of people aren't aware of the fact that they just don't love themselves. And then when you start to make that, start to bring that out into the open and people get it, now something that was unconscious has now become very conscious. Maybe painful, but still conscious. And until they can get that, until that piece comes from the unconscious into the conscious, they can't do the work.
Yeah, for me personally, that was the kicker.
Yeah.
The kickstart, because I believe that I had all the self-esteem in the world.
Absolutely.
Until I was told to look at my behaviors.
Right.
And then when I realistically sat down and started looking at where I was before I started transformational therapy and the things that I was doing to put myself in harm's way, then how can I possibly have any self-esteem?
Well, to fix or transform or to change, you've got to know what the cause is. And a lot of people, they don't focus on self-esteem. They don't focus on not loving yourself. So they think that the problem is the substances like alcohol, narcotics, or they think it's, other people, trauma, or what's the latest thing or the current thing is the diseased brain. They have some external cause that's causing them to be the way that they are. And in my opinion, that's why the relapse rates are so high. People just don't know what the issue is. And, it's like trying to fix your car and you don't know what the problem is.
Well, isn't that in a sense also, isn't it a lot easier to blame a disease or to blame other people or events that have happened to us in our life than to actually look and say, you know what, maybe there's something wrong with what's going on inside of here?
Sure. Yeah, denial, that just not taking a look at themselves. And that inevitably, as you know, that inevitably ends up in things not nice happening, like relapses and all that sort of stuff. And is it painful to take a look at that darkness that you talked about? Absolutely can be, and most of the time is, but it's absolutely necessary. No change happens unless you do that work.
That's going to lead us into the triangle there, because when we rely on those external factors into why we're using, then if we do slip back, it's like, oh, well, I have a disease, or he did this, or she did that, or this happened to me. And then you start playing the victim role.
Right.
And which is responsibility for our triangle. For our new people that are following us and joining us, the triangle here is the foundation for your transformation. And with the responsibility, people think that you're talking about being blamed or having shame, where it's actually empowered, correct?
Exactly. It is total empowerment because you are responsible. And it's one of the things, responsibility, choice, and power are absolutes. We're always emanating them. We're always using them. It's never like we're not responsible, or we're never choosing, or we don't have the power. We've always got the power.
And then we have, with our choice, whatever happens in our life, it's always our choice to make decisions. But a lot of the choices that we make are based on a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? And most of us in the throes of addiction have a negative self-image and have a low standard of what we're deserving of or what we're capable of.
Right. And all the choices that we make, the decisions we make, are based upon what we've referred to in therapy and in the groups as a self-limiting belief. I mean, it's that sense of inadequacy, that I'm not good enough. And when that changes, then your choices and your decisions are much more in alignment with your health and you taking care of yourself. And then you don't end up doing things like using a lot, in narcotics or alcohol. You start to honor your body. You honor your spirit and honor your everything, your mind.
Yeah, with the choices, we also always talk about, we have the power to make that choice, but we have to understand that there are consequences that come with those choices.
Always.
And with that negative self-belief, and when you are in active addiction, you don't care about the consequences because you don't really care about yourself and what happens to you.
Correct. Right. You don't care about other people because you fundamentally don't care about yourself. You're right. Yep. And so you make choices. In fact, you're making choices that hurt you. In fact, the primary design is for you to make negative choices that are not in your best interest. Quite the contrary.
It's basically self-sabotage.
It is, yeah. Well, yeah, it's self-sabotage par excellence. As you've heard me say that, drugs and alcohol are merely the instruments for self-execution. So, it's really, it's pretty heavy stuff.
And with this work, with the our taking responsibility and being empowered and making positive choices and building our self-esteem, that is an avenue where we can deal with a lot of mental health issues, because a lot of substance use disorders, people with substance use disorders are predominantly facing mental health issues as well, such as anxiety, depression, not just addiction.
Right. I believe that if you have a substance use diagnosis, if you get that, you necessarily you have a mental health issue. Now, not necessarily you can have a mental health issue and not have a substance use issue, but if you've got a substance use issue, you have a mental health issue. And the mental health issue is the primary deal. That's what's going on. Like major depression, one of the symptoms, which I think is the cardinal sign of it, is low self-esteem, which to me is the real essence of addictive use, of addictive behavior, which is what I refer to it now as addictive behavior. Because it's just, I don't use the term addiction, or if I do it, it's sparingly and for some other reason. But it's really addictive behavior. It's all coming out of a low self-image. The person just doesn't think that they're worth much. Their value and worth is very low. And that's the whole focus, as you know, of transformation, is to help people to start to, think better of themselves, respect themselves, accept themselves, and ultimately to start to love themselves.
And that's not going to stop until you reclaim the power that you've tried to give away and make a commitment to do this work. And actually, there's a difference between knowing it and doing it. Right.
Yes.
Right. And putting it into wisdom.
Yes. Yeah. Knowledge is what is the first phase when you learn about the triangle, when you learn about really the principles of transformation are just a new way of thinking. And it's based on knowledge. I mean, when you first heard the words, you're responsible, okay, that's the beginning, the transfer of knowledge. And some people don't like that. They don't like to be responsible, but they are. We are responsible. And so you start to have this conversation about the principles of transformation, and the more you have it, the more a way of thinking starts to set in. You start to see everything differently. It's powerful.
Well, individuals that are initially getting into this work of transformational therapy and change, when the first thing you hear is that you're responsible for everything, but the first thing that people tend to do is like, but,
That's right. That's right.
he did this or she did this, or my boss is this, or my boss is that.
Yep.
And this happened to me when I was young. And so what do you expect me to have? Or I have a disease.
Yep.
And then I think with the awareness and with this, as the self-esteem builds, I know for me personally that I embrace responsibility. I look for responsibility. When something happens, I immediately say, where did I come into this?
Yes. Yes. And that's the way you do it. You know. And, we talk about the support group that we have in the morning, and that's where the wisdom takes place, where, somebody has a problem that's going on in their life, and then you interpret it in terms of the principles of transformation. So you deal like, how were you responsible? And it's the application of it, bringing it into a person's experiences, their day-to-day experiences. That's when the change really takes place. When you can interpret your day-to-day stuff you having with your girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever, and that's when you start to change. It's using the principles to basically see your life different and see yourself different.
And with transformational therapy, now, this has been around for a long time.
Uh-huh.
It's not as commercial. It's not as commercial as some 12-step programs. But the first thing that people are going to see when they face this is resistance.
You see?
Well, I'm not responsible. How can I forgive this? How can I forgive that?
Right.
Which is forgiveness, especially for yourself, is going to be key as you move forward in this evolution.
Right. I mean, there is a tendency in the 12-step program to pass on the message that, people are not responsible for their disorder or their condition. And as you know, I just don't believe that. I mean, it's just not true. You have to take full responsibility for it. That's the only way it changes. If you don't take responsibility for it, then you play a very dangerous role called being victim. And victimization doesn't work real well. So, as you know.
Yeah, and when you play the victim, you're stuck, right?
You're stuck. Yep.
You're not going anywhere. It's stuck or neutral is going backwards to me.
Yeah. Usually people are stuck in the past because they're blaming somebody or something in their past. And until they can get out of the past and get into the present, which is another one of the principles, our power rests in the present moment, which I think is principle 5. And, when we're in the present, we're not in the past. And that's where everything starts to come together.
And in the past, and talk about forgiving for ourselves. And that was big for me also, being able to forgive myself and not feel guilt or shame, and understanding that just because I made mistakes doesn't mean I'm a mistake.
Correct. Absolutely.
And I did the best that I possibly could with the knowledge, understanding, and awareness that I had at the time.
Exactly.
Now, if you have more knowledge, understanding, and awareness, and you continue to make the same decisions, that's highly unlikely, but that's a different story.
Well, it's a different story in the sense that you're not really applying them. I think that you're not really paying attention to them. But what you just said about I'm doing the best that I can. That's another it's number like 6, I think 5, 6 or 7. It's another powerful concept, another idea that makes up this philosophy of transformation. And when you start to use that, you get over guilt. You start to be able to let go of your past, move into the present. It all fits like a matrix. All of the principles of transformation, they all come together. And in fact, they sort of work together. I'm working on an article where the 10 principles of transformation can be seen from how to deal with daily problems. So it's an interesting endeavor that I've got going. So
yeah, with that understanding and doing the best that we could, it doesn't mean that we condone our actions. We're still taking responsibility for it. I mean, we did it, but we will do better next time with the knowledge that we have now.
Right. But like you said before, if I make a mistake, which has to do with my behavior, I am not my behavior. I am not my mistake. So, it's just a matter of like learning knowledge. Knowledge is the key to transformation. It's the first stage. And the more knowledge you can get, the better.
I know for me, as I was doing this work, I found out who I was. I found my identity.
You see?
And it's hard to go through the transformational process if you don't know who you are.
Isn't it?
Right? Because for years, I looked at myself as a teacher and as a coach and as a father and as a husband. But, those are roles that I play, correct? That's not who I was. And if I don't know who I am at the core.
Right. So the question is, who are you? Right?
Yes, exactly. Well, where do we find that out?
Well, we go inside. The 10th principle of transformation states that we are source, spirit, higher power, the divine, or we could call it God. And I think that's the piece that's missing, truly missing from people, not just in recovery, but I think most people in general. They're disconnected from spirit, from source. And when we're disconnected, we start to create stuff that's not in alignment with a higher power or, whatever you want to call that. But I think that's part of the source. But transformation gives you a clear way to get connected again. And that's to learn how to love yourself.
And even when you're disconnected, your true self is still in there. Your identity is still in there.
Absolutely.
And it's knocking and knocking and knocking, and we just don't listen to it, or we can't hear it because we've numbed it away and we've disconnected.
You're onto something. We don't listen sometimes to it. It's speaking to us.
Yep.
It's saying, hey, that's not a great idea to do that. And sometimes we don't listen, or we
don't care.
Just ignore it. We just don't care. Right. But I think Lord Donald Walsh in the Conversations with God said that, our spirit's always talking to us. Always. And in our voice. So, it's just a matter of, are we listening? So it's always there. You're right.
Yeah, and it was spirit source, higher power, or God, as you say. Some people like to equate religion and spirituality.
You see?
Which are two different concepts.
Very, very different. Yes. Yeah.
And similar to you, I believe that God is love.
Yes.
And if I'm created in the image of God, and I am loving to myself and to other people, then that is where I'm drawing in my power, and that's going to give me my integrity to live the life that I want to live for myself again and everyone around me that comes into contact with me.
Yeah. And that was the epiphany when I was finishing the book, and I had the epiphany. I mean, it was like powerful, what you just said was like right on the money. That's who we are. And when we learn how to love ourselves, we're getting connected. Same process. They're not different. You don't have to learn to love yourself then to get connected to God. When you learn how to love yourself, you're getting connected to God. So yeah, it's to me it makes all the sense in the world.
And again, as we mentioned, that's Dr. Harry's book, Prelude: A Paradigm Shift to Addiction, which you can find on enhancedhealing.com, and I highly recommend it in your journey towards transformation. Dr. Harry, again, thank you for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. We love having you here to discuss transformational therapy. Remember, you can reach Dr. Harry at enhancedhealing.com, or you can follow us at real_raw_recovery, or visit our webpage at realrawrecovery.org to get all of the necessary tools to help you on your journey of transformation. This podcast has gone over a little bit than we were expecting, so we are going to extend this podcast into a 2-part series. So please join us next week as we continue talking transformation with the 10 principles of transformation with Dr. Harry. Everybody have a great day. Thanks for joining us again. Triple R Show, where honesty meets healing every single day. Enjoy your day, everyone. Bye-bye.